Yo, Automators, welcome to a video about Zapier Tables versus Airtable. This has been on my mind for a few days now, especially in light of Zapier's recent changes that you see on the screen here. Zapier has changed like crazy in general over the last months, expanding the platform with tables, with interfaces, with now chatbots, with Canvas. There's so much going on that I thought it makes sense to compare Airtable and Zapier Tables, Zapier's native data layer that they introduced. Because I was wondering, where does it still make sense to use Airtable? Where does it make sense to use Zapier Tables now? And just wanted to give you my thoughts on it. Let's get into it. Yeah, welcome to today's video. Before we dive in, two things. First, would mean a lot if you would subscribe to this channel, if you would like this video, if you would tell a colleague or friend about it, would be highly, highly appreciated. And secondly, I wanted to show you a small app that I've built, like a content wishlist app for this channel. If you have anything that you think might be great content or you want me to do a video about, please add it here on the list and upvote if you like something that's already here. I'll link this in the description below, but now let's get into it. There are two changes I want to highlight with Zapier that sort of have triggered this video today. First, a couple of days ago, they announced that tables are now part of the free plan, interfaces as well, but we're focusing on tables now. Tables is part of the free plan. Used to be rather exclusive. You only had access on a Zapier paid plan to this. Now, any user, any Zapier account has access to tables, which I think shows that they're really pushing this. And the second thing is that any Zap that uses Zapier Tables actions, as well as any of these other native Zapier native apps within Zaps, come free of charge. So once again, like that sort of sparked my interest and was a bit like, let's look at this a bit more closely. Something I want to show you as well is sort of my theory where all of these no-code platforms are developing into in general, which I've talked about before, are these sort of four automation pillars. So there's data, interfaces, automations, and AI. And basically how it used to be is that Airtable was dominating in the data space. Zapier was dominating the automation space. A couple more platforms, of course, I haven't included them all. I plan to turn this into a bigger graphic in the future where it sort of shows more apps here. But this, for the purpose of this video, this is sort of how it used to be. Airtable dominated data layer, Zapier dominated the automations layer. This is how it was like until maybe 2-3 years ago or so. And now suddenly we see all of these apps sort of moving into the other directions as well, right? So into these other areas as well. So Airtable has launched interfaces, of course. Airtable has native automations that we can use. Airtable has AI. Not everyone has access to this at this point, but there is AI. And Zapier is basically doing the same. So Zapier now has a data layer, called Zapier Tables. They have interfaces called Zapier Interfaces. And of course, Zapier is really strong when it comes to AI and especially working with ChatGPT or the OpenAI API. They have done a lot of work in that direction. So it's, for me, really interesting to see like how every platform is basically trying to be everywhere, right? So all of these like quadrants are getting basically populated by these platforms. Of course, in terms of automations, Zapier is still bigger here than Airtable is, right? In terms of what they offer, Zapier is by far the platform with the most integrations, 6,000 plus integrations. But I mean, Airtable is getting stronger and stronger there. Same for the data layer. Probably Airtable is still dominating here, but Zapier is moving there, right? And so this is the development that we have, right? All of these platforms are sort of in those areas. And yeah, that's why my intention is to document this development more over the coming months, coming years, in order to understand when does it make sense to use that software versus that software. When should I use the Zapier account that I have anyways versus my Airtable account that I have anyways. And today is sort of the first video really to document this, and we're focusing on the data layer today and comparing the Zapier data option versus the Airtable data option. So the way I want to compare this is basically in three areas. Like the first is we're going to look at pricing and sort of the overall features of both. Then I want to dive a bit deeper into field types. And then we look at sort of the look and feel of Zapier Tables, and sort of my overall impression of it. Because we sort of have Airtable as the solution that has been used for a long time for this purpose. And so we compare Zapier against that, basically. That's what I want to do. So let's look at pricing first. We have both pricing tables open here. And the first big difference I think that we have to point out, of course, is that Airtable, even though it's called Airtable, is really a database solution. And Zapier Tables currently is not a relational database solution. It's basically just tables you're opening and then you're adding data to that table. But currently, there's no feature of creating relationships between different tables. Where, of course, in Airtable, as it says it here, you're creating bases. So bases, a short term for databases, right? And within a database, you have multiple tables, and then you can create relationships between that data in those tables. So that is like, I think for me, the major difference, because that of course was something that always attracted me a lot to Airtable, coming, let's say, 10 years ago from Google Sheets, right, where that relationship is really difficult to achieve, where sort of that structure is difficult to achieve. That is a big difference now between Airtable and Zapier as well. But let's go to the table level and let's go to records, for instance, right? We get on the free plan 1,000 records in Airtable's free plan. Airtable has become a lot more restrictive in terms of the features they offer on the free plan. They basically don't want free users anymore. Zapier offers 2,500 on their free plan. So they're coming in pretty strong there. 100 fields per table on the free plan. I think in Airtable that is not capped on the free plan currently. I think they just do that with records, but that limit is pretty low. There is a limit on the amount of tables you have on the Zapier free plan. There isn't really a limit on the amount of bases you have on in Airtable. So if we go one up and we look at the Zapier's premium feature, we have 100,000 records per table, which is quite a lot. Airtable has 50,000 record limit on the team plan, and I think what's really important to say about about comparing the prices between the two is that for Airtable you pay $24 a month per seat. For Zapier, for the premium one, you pay $20 per month just added to your account. And if you're on the team plan, which is $69 a month, you have unlimited users. So the pricing is really different between the two. And in the case of Zapier, it really just depends on how much is getting automated with it. So there we still have this sort of automation platform first logic, whereas with Airtable, we of course have a how many collaborators do we have in our base and in our account, right? So if we have 10 team members and they all use the same base, that means that's $240 if you're paying monthly. That's $240 you're paying for Airtable, versus you have your Zapier table shared with 10 people. That doesn't necessarily mean that increases the cost a lot, right? You're on the team plan, which is $69, and then you're adding that premium offering for $20, the premium table offering for $20 a month. So very important comparison. And I think that's it. Like that's all I want to say, like in terms of the pricing. So let's look at Zapier Tables in detail, and I'd like to look at field types, because I think field types really are at the core, basically, of what the table offering is. Basically, what kind of data can I store there, and what can I do with it? First thing that I noticed in a way is that there's a lot of similarity to Airtable. So we have like a single line text, we have a long text, we have some date and time, we have a number, currency, etc., checkbox, drop down. All of these things we know from Airtable as well, and Zapier has them as well in tables already now. So a lot of similarity between the two. Something I want to highlight in Zapier Tables is the button field. The button field is done really strongly. So they focused a lot on buttons, a lot on interacting with your data in tables. Let me just go out here because I already have one here. So you basically setting this up and you say what kind of button is this. You have two options: triggering a zap or continuing a zap. Continuing a zap I find really interesting because you could do like something like an approval logic, right, where a zap stops at a certain point and waits for approval on something, right? So some team member needs to say yes, okay, let's go ahead with that client, with that project, whatever it is. Really, really interesting that they have focused so much on buttons. I think buttons also in Airtable is something that is traditionally underutilized. So users are not using it enough with what's possible with buttons. And I mean, buttons is really what's at the core of interfaces also, right? You have buttons to say okay, to save, to do something. So really interesting to see that Zapier is putting so much emphasis on that, and makes a lot of sense to me. And another thing that they do here is they say what's the default state, but also should it be disabled when clicked? So that is something we're really missing from Airtable at this point, where you can just click a button again and again and again, at least in tables or in the data layer, right? We're not talking about interfaces now, just in the data layer. Here they have sort of done that. Once you have done something, let's say that button sends an email, then it's disabled. So, and you can't send that email again because that email already has been sent, that outreach to a client, that whatever it is, right? Really, really interesting feature, I think. So buttons are very, very strongly done in Zapier Tables. Something else that is really interesting, they say it's experimental still, is the JSON column. So you can basically create, add in JSON here and have it being validated. Excuse me. Having been it being validated right away, which is really interesting. So, say you want to interact with APIs and you're sending JSON data, there's some structured data, then you can already validate this in here. So, if I say A2, this is basically invalid JSON because this would need to be string. So, really, really interesting. Yeah, they're focusing on that. And then a few core things are missing, which we have access to in Airtable. First thing is relationships. Talked about this before. Of course, we can build any relationships between tables currently, which is a huge feature of Airtable, of course. So that sort of out of the way first. Another thing that I'm really missing here is formulas. So a formula is extremely important for Airtable, and you find them in other no-code platforms as well, because we use formulas for everything. Of course, we use formulas for creating certain texts, right? Where we want to send specific text somewhere, we want to modify a text, we want to create a unique text, we want to create some sort of text with data that's already in that record, right? We want to do a simple calculation, right? Where we want to add something to a number. We want to calculate a total based on a subtotal and taxes or whatever. Like there's like a lot of calculations we do in our tables usually. All of that is not possible in Zapier Tables. So I think this is extremely limiting. Looking at my own work and how I've worked with Airtable over the years, I think it's really only because of that. Zapier Tables isn't really a substitute currently. The relationship aspect, building relationships between tables, we've talked about that. That's a big one, of course. It's a big fundamental difference between both platforms. But yeah, not having a formula field basically means a lot needs to happen in Zaps. So we need to calculate something, we need to reformat something, etc. We would need to do all of these things in Zaps, which I think is intentional by Zapier to do it that way. But knowing my work, knowing how I work, usually it's pretty cumbersome. So it's something that would add a lot of complexity to my setup. And I think I'm usually a lot faster in typing a spreadsheet-like formula, Excel-like formula. That's where sort of Airtable took that from. Then using something like a zap action, like an action step where they need to have that input and an output, and it's just not as fast as typing a formula. So I would say that is a big fundamental difference as well between both platforms that would make it pretty difficult for me to change and to switch over. And the last area I want to focus on here in Zapier Tables is sort of the look and feel of it. So positive things first. I'm pretty impressed with how quick it is. I think it's sometimes not as snappy as we know it from Airtable, but it's relatively okay. It's quite fast. So I've added a record now, for instance, add another record. But as you can see, there's a bit more of a delay than in Airtable, but it's okay. I think it's okay. Something that is definitely missing currently is sorting and grouping. So just working, if you want to work in the table layout, in this grid layout, as it's called in Airtable, sorting and grouping is really important. So there are filters here, and filters basically filter down the table, just as we know it from Airtable as well. And you can do that on any field type and with any criteria. So that's pretty powerful. Not as powerful as we have it in Airtable currently, where you have nested conditions, etc. But powerful enough for now, I'd say. But what's really missing, I think, is sorting and grouping. So just imagine you have 50,000 records now here in the table. That's a lot of data. And if you really want to work in this, and given that they have introduced the buttons that can't be clicked anymore, etc. I mean, the intention definitely is to also work in tables and not only work in interfaces. But I think that's really missing compared to what we know from Airtable and also like from Airtable, right? And what we're used to. And that brings me to my conclusion in comparing both platforms. So Zapier Tables is a pretty good start, I think. There's a lot there. If you need a simple store for your data, like nothing too complex, you just need a place where you dump data and you can process it further, automate stuff further from there, and you're in the Zapier universe already anyways, great option. I'm pretty sure I will use it in projects of mine. Where Airtable feels like an overkill, where basically I know that I need Zapier anyways to automate that data further, to connect it to certain apps, where I just need a place where to hold data basically, and don't use any of the other features of Airtable. Definitely going to use Zapier Tables in those projects. Beyond that, if it goes beyond that, I'll still stick to Airtable. So what we talked about, relational data. One of the core features of Airtable, of course, being a relational database, building those connections between tables, extremely important and happens in almost every project, to be honest. If the data structure gets a bit more complex, gets beyond what one table can hold, you need a relational database for that. Formula fields are missing. So any simple calculation, also more complex calculation that we do sometimes in formulas, building certain texts, etc., would now all need to happen in Zaps, which is quite cumbersome and difficult, I think. So there I see Airtable still being front and center for that. Last thing, sorting and grouping. So really working in this tabular layout is difficult without being able to sort properly, without being able to group properly. So that is something that I would definitely miss as well. Being quick with the data, being able to show things concisely. That is something where Airtable really trumps as well, I think. But that being said, I'm still impressed with what Zapier has done here. I think it's a very good start, and for smaller projects, definitely something I would recommend using. But yeah, I hope this gave you a good overview of when to use Airtable, when to use Zapier Tables, or rather when to use Zapier Tables and when to still use Airtable. And let me know in the comments below if you like this video, if you have questions, if you see things differently. This is just my take on this from having used both platforms, Airtable, of course, a lot longer, and now having looked into Zapier Tables as it came out. Really looking forward to your feedback. And now I wish you all the best and happy automating. Speak to you soon.